I am lying on the deep purple velour blanket of a Knight's Inn just south of Toledo. I'm 12 years old, and my life as I know it is over. We are on the first night of a 3-day journey from Greater Chicagoland, where I've spent my entire life, it's the only home I know, to move out here to the DC area and start a new life. Me, my family, my parents, and my 2 brothers. To say that I'm ambivalent about this would be a massive understatement. I am sad that I've left all my friends and relatives back home in Chicago, and I'm scared. How am I going to make new friends in this new school, in this whole new part of the country? We are trying to wind down from the drive and after dinner, and Dad is flipping through the channels. It's summer, everything's in reruns, and he gets a look on his face. Well, I guess I'll just check PBS. I roll my eyes. My brothers groan audibly. He's gonna make us watch another one of those boring nature specials. But rather than a lion chasing a gazelle across the savannah, we are greeted by the image of a golden astronaut floating through a tunnel. He emerges and flies away. The camera pulls back. The tunnel is the letter O in the word to of the title, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It seems like most of you are at least somewhat familiar with it. For those of you who aren't, Hitchhikers has been described as Doctor Who meets Monty Python. But it's so much more than that, as I was about to discover. We meet Arthur Dent, a perfectly average British man in his early 30s. He's just found out that his house is going to be demolished to make way for a highway bypass. He is pleading with the bulldozer driver and the official to not knock his house down. Then his friend Ford Prefect shows up, whisks him off to the pub, and tells him that A, Ford is actually an alien from a planet circling Betelgeuse, and 2, the Earth is about to be destroyed to make way for a hyperspace bypass. From there, Ford manages to get them beamed up to one of the ships that is about to do the deed, and seconds later, the Earth is blown to smithereens. I'm totally into this thing. We next meet the vile Vogons, these aliens whose most insidious weapon is the poetry that they write and recite. Best typified by one of their masterpieces, Ode to a Small Lump of Green Putty I Found in My Armpit One Midsummer Morning. From there, Ford and Arthur are thrown out the airlock and rescued at the last second by Zaphod Beeblebrox, the president of the galaxy, a 2-headed alien who has just stolen a prototype spaceship that runs on the power of improbability. And peppered throughout all of this are entries from the titular book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Think of it as a space Wikipedia. And it tells you helpful things like the most important item that any galactic hitchhiker can have is not a laser gun or a subspace radio, it's a towel. Thank you, a few of you know. And because a towel can do so many things. You can hold it over your head to keep the rays of alien suns away from you. You can wrap it around your head to keep the noxious fumes of otherworldly swamps at bay. You can wave it as a distress signal when you're in trouble. And if it's not too dirty after all of that, you can dry yourself with it. The show ended, and I wanted more. But we were just stumbling on this on a random TV station outside of Toledo. I didn't know if I'd ever get the chance again, and this was way before any kind of video on demand. I could only hope I would stumble on it at some point in the future. About a month later, my family and I had settled into the house we were renting here in Fairfax, and it was a rainy day. I hadn't really made any friends yet, and I was bored. I'd read all of my books, there was nothing good on TV, so I thought, well, maybe Dad's got a book I could read. I could start reading some of his stuff, that'd be fine. And I go to the bookshelf. He's got a lot of science fiction. It's Asimov, Heinlein, Clarke, Herbert. There it is! The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's a book! I snatch it off the shelf, plop down on the couch, and pick up where I left off that night in Toledo. As soon as I finish it, I run up to my dad. Dad, why didn't you ever tell me this is a book? I love this. This is the best thing I've ever read. He smiles, turns to his bookshelf, and hands me the sequel. And this is where I learned that all of these wonderful ideas come from one marvelous mind, the author, Douglas Adams. And like Gene Roddenberry with Star Trek and George Lucas with Star Wars, it is this one guy who's brought this new world into my life, this hilarious, wonderful world. School starts up in September, and the first friend I make is a kid named James. And in our first conversation, he brings up Hitchhikers. He's read both books. He's seen the whole series. He tells me I can go to the library and check out cassette tapes of the radio version. We geek out about this. We bond over it. We both carry towels in our backpacks. And James is the one who tells me that the third book in the series is coming out later that year. We get our copies at the same time, and I bring mine into school the next day because I want to read this every chance I get, and I'm kind of a slow reader. So I'm reading during study hall, and it's supposed to be a quiet place, right? Where you're not supposed to laugh. But I'm having so much fun with this book. I have to stop every few paragraphs, calm myself down, before I can read further. I get to the point where Arthur has just learned how to fly. And he doesn't do this by putting on a science fiction-y belt or drinking some magic elixir. The trick to flying, the book tells us, is to throw yourself out at the ground and miss. I get to the end of that chapter and I read these lines, and I may be paraphrasing slightly. 10 minutes later, drifting lazily through a cloud, Arthur took a large and extremely disreputable cocktail party to the small of his back. Now, to me in that moment, already ginned up, I couldn't help myself. I had to slap my hand over my face, put the book away, and wait for another time. James saw me doing this, caught my eye, and nodded knowingly. Hitchhikers became a touchstone in my life. Anytime I met someone who liked the book or any of the iterations, I knew we would be fast friends. And while I didn't want the planet to have to be blown up for me to actually do this, it did make me want to travel to exotic locations. It took a while before I got my chance. I was 31 the first time I left the country. And my then girlfriend asked if I would like to join her at a scientific conference she was going to attend on the Canary Islands off the west coast of Africa. Well, I jumped at the chance. And even though we were going to take commercial airline flights and not stow away in a UFO, I brought my towel in my carry-on. It was a wonderful trip full of little adventures and wonderful sights. But the best part of it happened for me the night the conference ended. They had a banquet, and I was seated next to the spouse of one of the other scientists, a woman named Sally. And she brought up Hitchhikers. We spent the next hour delightfully ignoring our significant others and geeking out together. The next morning, I'm checking out of the hotel, and I see Sally across the lobby, and I wave to her, and she comes over to me, and she has a very concerned look on her face. Sally, what's wrong? Are you okay? You're not going to believe it. I just heard on the radio. Douglas Adams died yesterday. I was stunned. I would find out later he was only 49. Same age I am now, coincidentally. I thought of all the joy his books and creations had given me and the friends it had brought to my life, the way it had helped me through a really difficult transition. I thought about all the books he would never write, and I instinctively reached for my towel. A couple of days later, some fans of his online decided that they were going to declare a day in his honor. And they would call it Towel Day. Everyone who's a fan of Douglas Adams would have their towel with them all day on that day. They set it for 2 weeks after his passing, which was May 25th. Today is the 18th Towel Day. You can bet I've had mine with me all day. And I have to imagine that wherever they ended up, James and Sally have their towels close by too.